All right, today we are going on a journey way back in time to uncover the pretty incredible and frankly super unexpected origins of English theater. It's a story that kicks off not some grand playhouse, but in a place of worship, which, that raises a really fascinating question. I mean, that sounds kind of crazy, right? One is all about quiet, solemn reverence, and the other is about loud, passionate, often bloody drama. But believe me, the connection between them is the very bedrock of every play we know and love today.
So, get this. English drama was literally born from Christian church rituals back in the Middle Ages. The very first actors weren't actors at all. They were priests. And the first stage, it was the altar. Now, the key thing to understand is just how integrated these little performances were. They weren't a separate show. They were a living, breathing part of the Mass itself. And it makes sense, right? This was all designed to help a congregation that mostly couldn't read connect with the core stories of their faith in a really visceral way. And it worked. These plays became unbelievably popular. So popular, in fact, that they just couldn't be contained inside the church walls anymore. And this led to a huge shift, taking drama from a sacred ritual to public entertainment.
And here we have the actual turning point. A formal decree in 1240 basically opened the floodgates. The plays moved out onto the church steps, and from there, they spilled right out into the bustling heart of the town, the market square.
So what did that actually look like? Well, people would build these incredible pageant wagons. Think of them as rolling mobile stages. They'd stage entire plays on them and pull them through town, bringing the Bible to life for everyone to see during big holidays like Christmas and Easter.
And this is where it gets really cool, because the whole community got involved. The local craft guilds, the professional unions of their day, took over producing the plays, and they chose stories that fit their trade, which is just brilliant. Of course, the bakers put on the Last Supper, and who better to stage the wedding of Cana than the winemakers?
But this kind of folksy, religious drama wasn't going to last forever. A series of massive cultural earthquakes hit in the 1500s that would completely tear down that old stage and build something entirely new and a whole lot darker in its place. So, first up, the Protestant Reformation pretty much put a full stop to these very Catholic-themed religious plays. This created a huge vacuum. At the exact same time, the Renaissance and the rise of humanism meant that scholars were rediscovering these violent, passionate tragedies from ancient Rome, especially from a writer named Seneca. See, in that old medieval mindset, the moral of the story was always crystal clear, and it always came from above. If you broke God's law, divine justice would get you. Simple as that. But these new plays, they were driven by a very, very different engine.
And that engine was human revenge. All of a sudden, the focus wasn't on God's justice anymore. It was on human passion, on intrigue, on blood feuds, and on getting even. This massive shift from a divine motive to a human one, it changed everything.
This new, explosive kind of drama needed a new kind of home. It needed a space that was built purely for entertainment, and that led to the creation of one of the most iconic buildings in the entire history of theater.
Welcome to the Globe Theater. These purpose-built playhouses, people called them wooden O's because of their round shape. They were basically the cauldrons where the plays of Shakespeare and his buddies really came to life. Now, you have to understand, their stage was totally different from what we're used to. We have a picture stage, right? It's framed like a TV screen, and it's filled with realistic sets. They had a platform stage, just a simple, bare platform that jutted right out into the middle of the audience. Because there wasn't any scenery, the whole focus was different. Just like this quote says, the experience was all about listening, not looking. The real power was in the poetry, in the words themselves. The drama was rhetorical. Just think about what that means. There's no painted backdrop of a castle. There's no elaborate forest set. If the scene was set in a forest, an actor would literally just walk on stage carrying a tree branch. The location, the time of day, the whole atmosphere, all of it was painted with words inside the audience's imagination. But hey, don't go thinking it was boring. What they saved on scenery, they definitely spent on sensation. Death scenes and battle scenes were shockingly realistic. They often used actual animal blood and organs to create some truly gory, visceral special effects.
This incredible era, this theater of the mind, was really a unique moment in history. But that pendulum that swung from the sacred to the secular, well, it was about to swing again, this time from the ear back to the eye.
Yeah, it wouldn't last. Over the next century, audiences started to want more visual spectacle.
They wanted to see the forest, not just hear some beautiful poetry about it. And so, that simple platform stage started giving way to the elaborate picture stage we know today.
And you can see this change perfectly in this one little example. About a century after Shakespeare, the super famous actor David Garrick played the Scottish King Macbeth. But he didn't wear simple, historically accurate robes. Nope. He wore a flashy, contemporary scarlet and gold military uniform. Realism and pure spectacle had officially taken center stage.
Which kind of brings us to a final thought. We've gone from the church altar, to the town square, to the Globe's theater of words, and finally to our modern era of spectacle. It really makes you wonder, in our own age of CGI and billion-dollar blockbusters, have we come full circle? Is there a risk that today the spectacle is once again outshining the power of the story itself? It's something to think about.